Johnson. I'm with an organization called NIMSY Insights, another organization called Multilingual Media. We publish a multilingual magazine, amongst other things. I'll let my colleague Liz here introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I am Liz Marsi. I am in enterprise sales for a company called Translated, which many of you have heard of. We are headquartered in Rome, but I am on the East Coast of the U.S. in Connecticut, outside of New York City, and really excited to be here with our guest speakers today.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. And I'm trying to fix you all up on the screen here. Giulia, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Giulia Greco. I'm a localization programs lead at Shopify, and I am originally Italian from Milano, but I live in Toronto, Canada.
Welcome, welcome. And Ronaldo.
Yes, thank you for having me, Tucker. My name is Ronaldo Dieziger. I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation. Dieziger sounds better than... So in Swiss German, it's Dieziger. Not sure if that's Dieziger. Not sure if that's easier. I'm the managing partner and co-founder of Supertext. We are a language service provider focusing on creative projects. I think we made ourselves a name for Transcreation, stuff like that. I'm Swiss, obviously, and I'm living in LA since 2016.
The best of all worlds, Swiss living in LA. I love it.
Yes, exactly.
Talk to us a little bit about, well, before we get into it, let's just introduce, let's do a quick setting of the room here. This is Clubhouse. This is not a webinar. It says that in the description. We are broadcasting live, but the beauty of Clubhouse is we get to have very fascinating conversations with fascinating people. And I very much look forward now for the second week in a row for getting to talk with people and facilitate conversations and moderate these conversations rather than just talking at everybody. So we have some very experienced, interesting people in the audience. I encourage you, please raise your hand if you'd like to come up to the stage. I'll try not to pick on people, but it's an open stage, and I welcome you to come on up if you have a question or comment for the speakers today, Ronaldo and Giulia, or just have something that you'd like to say. So with that, I'd like to start off here. Let's start off with Giulia. Let's go to you. Tell us a little bit about localization and what that means, in case there's people in the audience who are perhaps not familiar with localization, and what it means for you.
And Tucker, not to jump ahead, but why don't we start with having our guest speakers introduce themselves, and then we jump right in.
Let's do that. Yes, of course. Introduce yourself first. I was thinking that the introduction would come as part of the opening spiel. So great minds think alike.
Cover my bases here.
That's why we have two moderators. So Giulia, would you like to go first?
Sure. Okay, yes. So as I said, I'm Giulia Greco. I am a localization programs lead at Shopify, which is a commerce platform for those of you who may not know Shopify. I'm Italian from Milano, but I've been living in Toronto, Canada for 18 years. Far too long. I wish I was a Swiss living in LA. Instead, I'm an Italian living in Canada. I don't know where things went wrong. Anyway.
Italy is nice too. Come on.
Italy is very nice. I don't know why I'm not there. I am in Canada right now, where it's like snowy and gray and slushy and just terrible overall. Anyway, let's not dwell on that. So yeah, I joined Shopify 4.5 years ago. I was hired as the Italian translator. Funny enough, at Shopify 4.5 years ago, they weren't doing internationalization and localization yet. What they thought might be interesting and a good experiment to try was to translate their very successful English blog, which was being read by about 2 million people mostly in North America and other English-speaking places in the world. They thought, what if we just do an experiment and hire a bunch of translators and translate this thing in a bunch of languages, and let's see what happens. And so I was one of the initial translators that was hired for this reason. And funny enough, I joined, and my boss, who bless his heart, was a content marketer and a very good marketing guy, but knew nothing about localization. He was like, okay, so when are you gonna start publishing your first post in Italian? And I was like, well, when we have a homepage in Italian, because there's nothing in Italian. So where am I gonna put these beautiful blog posts that I'm translating? So they're like, oh, right.
Right.
We didn't think about that.
Right.
So I started translating the homepage too, and bringing a low level of localization at the beginning. And at the same time, the team that I belong to, so my colleagues and I, my Spanish colleague and my French colleague and my Brazilian Portuguese colleague, we were all setting up our systems and processes and tools in a very scrappy, startup-y type of way. We got yelled at by our IT departments more than once. We were doing things that apparently we were not supposed to do. We were like, but we need cat tools, and cat tools don't run on Apple. So we just downloaded a version of VMware, and now we're running parallel systems, and everybody's freaking out in security, and we don't know why we're being yelled at. Anyway,
as an ops guy, like, my blood pressure is raising just hearing you talk about that myself.
If I could go back to those days, I would do it exactly the same. It was the best days. It was fantastic. It was
fun,
great.
right?
It's fun. It was so fun.
A lot of us got our start in localization basically being thrown to the wolves.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Man, it sucked at the time, but I am so grateful. I have a similar background myself. So, Ronaldo, let's hear from you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a bit about what is Transcreation, this fancy word that you used earlier, and about Shopify. Just really quick, let me introduce you really quick. Let me do a better job here. Is like this whole idea for this room came across because Ronaldo posted something on LinkedIn that was all about Shopify localization. And Liz and I were talking at the time, and she's like, hey, let's make this a subject of this next weekly thing. So, Ronaldo, you're to blame for this.
I am. Sorry.
I don't think he minds.
Yeah, what can I tell about myself? So, I'm not really a translator. So, I have a background in advertising as a copywriter. I have been a copywriter at Leo Burnett and Publicis and some of like these advertising agencies. That was just before basically the internet broke the whole madman era. So I was part of that era a little bit, just at the end. So we did still smoke in the office, that was a good time.
Heathens.
Right?
Those were the days.
Those were the days, right? And then, like, after almost 10 years, I kind of needed a break from advertising, so an advertising break. I went on a trip through Mexico for 3 months, and then when I came back, it was the financial crisis, and I needed to wait for my next copywriter assignment job. And so I didn't really know what to do, and I had a friend who was working in an institute for entrepreneurs, and they had a booth at a fair, and he asked me if I could help, like hand out flyers, something like that. And I did that, and then I connected to the boss of this institute and basically asked me, what are you doing? And I said, I'm a copywriter, I write stuff for advertising. And then he hired me as a freelance writer to, rewrite the website of this Institute for Entrepreneurs. And I found it really interesting, this whole entrepreneur thing. I booked a business plan workshop to, just do a research and dive into the topic. And then I was in this room with 20 other people, and everyone had an idea for a new business. And I thought, man, this is really cool. I want to do this too. So I tried to find an idea for a business myself. And I think the first idea was to have an online store that sells socks made by grandmothers.
All right.
So the idea was to you could design online your sock. Maybe, the upper part is blue, the lower part is like yellow, and then I would cut the wool. I would cut the wool and send it directly to real grannies, and they would then knit the socks and send it to the customers. So that was the original idea. And then I got into it, and I found out that it takes quite a while to do socks, and that would never make a profit, for example. But
Yeah.
in these times, when you searched my name on Google, the first entry was me in a knitting forum looking for
Stop
grannies.
it.
That's
So,
that's amazing.
yeah.
So
I
last week we ended up talking about honey and like the localization
Very
implications of
very good.
honey
Now
for
we're
20 minutes.
talking about knitting.
Okay,
Knitting socks.
and then the next thing was I remembered one of the main sentences from this business plan workshop, which was a stick to what you really can do. And so then instead of building an online shop for socks, I basically tried to multiply myself as a copywriter and then build a network of copywriter friends, and you will be able to upload a document and get it rewritten by a professional copywriter. This was the original idea for Supertext, the company.
Oh.
And this was very new. So we're basically the first ever worldwide online shop for, editing, copywriting. And it took us only a year or two until people asked us to do this in other languages too. Switzerland is a country with 4 official languages. So it was kind of natural that people asked us to have the same super quality in other languages. And that's why we got into translation, but we never saw it as translation, we rather saw it as writing the whole thing in a different language. And I think that's the essence of transcreation. It's not really a translation, like translating word by word, but taking the message and the meaning and recreate that in another language. For me, that's the definition of transcreation. And that's what we do until today. It's now 15 years. We are in Zurich, in Berlin, in LA, going to be a global company and a brand for this whole transcreation thing.
Yeah. I know here over at NIMSY, whenever somebody's asking about transcreation, you guys are always one of the first people we send them over your way. So hopefully you're getting some leads in there. And the reason we do that is because not a lot of companies. No, I take that back. A lot of companies offer transcreation out there in the industry, but they're translation companies that have added transcreation as a service. And I think what makes Supertext unique, and this isn't a sales pitch for Supertext, but what makes Supertext unique is that background. Is you don't think like a translation company, you think like a transcreation or a copywriting company.
Right.
Exactly. And I want to talk about the article that you wrote on LinkedIn, though, Ronaldo. One of the questions that you posed in that article was, do I need to localize the customer experience? How does that relate to localizing a Shopify, localizing for Shopify? And this is a little bit different conversation than the actual enterprise localization that we're going to get into with Giulia here.
Yeah, I think it's important to think about the audience you're targeting. Like customers expect different things in different markets, and I think the experience someone has in a shop you operate, like a Shopify store, needs to be adjusted or adapted to the customer in that market. So people in Germany prefer other things than people in the US, and so it's not only about adapting, the whole content. It's also about like how you talk to the customers. When I came to the US, one thing that struck me is like the creativity or the directness of the messaging you get when you bought something. And in Germany, that's very different. So it's more like formal, and there is just like a different way of how people expect to be treated. And I think you would be better off trying to meet those expectations.
That's very true, actually. That is very, very true. Like I find that even in our content marketing efforts, it's very interesting how in North America, customer service, for example, it's probably the best. I've never been lucky enough to be able to travel to Asia. I was supposed to, and then COVID hit. So I don't know how things are on that side of the world. But between Europe and North America, I would argue that North America has the best customer service, most polite salespeople, very helpful, very friendly, always, they're there to do a job, and their job is to assist the client when you walk into a brick and mortar store. Europe is not necessarily like that. In Italy, I find that, salespeople are almost annoyed and they don't often want to help you. And I find that very bizarre, very strange. I'm like, well, okay, you don't want to sell? Fine, I don't need to buy here. But so in our content marketing that we do, when we handle that type of topic, it's almost not only, on one end, we're keeping an eye on the fact that people perceive these things very differently, but I also think that it is a selling point. And I just think that, Italian shop owners are not necessarily doing the right thing by not training their employees to be a little more North American in that respect. And I think that finding the ones who are a little more enlightened and a little more up with the times and copy the model that goes on here on this side of the pond are actually going to be more successful. So, by pushing content that reflects that in a respectful way, of course, I'm not going to go in the content and say, so, okay, you guys in Italy, you all suck at customer service and you need to raise the bar. That's not how I'm going to do it. But I do, we do it in an encouraging, supportive way. Have you considered doing this? Have you considered doing that? And that type of suggestions that we give may be very run-of-the-mill here in North America, but they're completely novel there. And so they become actionable points. So it's very interesting.
Awesome. Sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. How give us some examples. Ronaldo, you mentioned some examples about how you mentioned this phenomenon that people buy differently, and I get that. We've done a lot of research at NIMSY. We have like a whole study on online consumer behavior, how people will react, how localization translation coming to people in their local language affects consumer behavior online. So I'm well aware of it, but for those of us that perhaps not, give us some examples. Like how is it different? And Giulia just gave us a great example of customer service in basically anywhere besides America. Americans, we are just completely obsequious kiss asses when it comes to customer service.
Yes.
And I love it. I love it.
I love
wouldn't want it
too.
any other way.
Agree.
What are some other examples? Anyone in the audience too? I know you guys got some good examples. Hell, I've lived through some examples with you guys in the audience. So come on up on stage.
And if anybody wants to say anything, raise your hand, and we'll bring you on up. We should also give the disclaimer, Tucker, that we are live streaming this. So anybody who is on stage and decides to speak, please know that it is being broadcast.
Indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, I forgot to say that in the beginning.
So did I. I think.
Very good.
I think.
I have an example. So we're working for a company here in LA, and they have developed this amazing baby crib. In the first couple of months, when you have a baby, they cry a lot.
I know a little bit about that.
I was going to say.
It's horrifying, and they found something that that crib kind of shakes and calms, soothes the baby.
I've seen this. I've strongly considered buying one.
Do you need one?
I also, because I have 3 kids, right, all very close together. And
me too.
Yeah, so So tell us more.
Yeah, exactly. And they have a Shopify store basically, and raised a lot of money to expand this crib into Europe. And then we collaborated with them on this expansion. And one thing that I found really interesting having those discussions about the difference between European mothers and American mothers. So there's obviously a big difference how mothers in the US approach their babies and what they do. And also like a German mother is very different to the kid like a French mother, and this triggers obviously a case for transcreation where you cannot just like, for example, the customer reviews or like this hilarious, positive, you know, reviews American mothers give, the oh my God reviews. You cannot just like adapt this and bring those on to like Germany, for example.
Right.
You know, you need to find a different way to communicate that.
Well, it's like
And I think that's a good example of like how you have to adapt the store to a different market. You cannot just like take the whole content and publish it somewhere else. You need to
Right.
have a deep look at what could be what is translatable to that market, and what's missing, what different approach do we have to take, and then develop content specifically for that market. So it's always kind of a mix between, you know, adapting what you already have and then develop new stuff for that market.
Yeah, you need some original content
Yes.
there. And I think like you need to go a little farther than that. It's not just an issue of localization at this point. You need to really understand your audience and do some user persona segmentation and that type of market research that goes a bit deeper. It's not just about featuring, local examples and local imagery and localized language, but it really goes much farther than the surface. And especially for something, you made the perfect example. I mean, you're right. Like mothers are completely different in different countries. Like it's a very, very good example.
Right. So
Thank
you're
you.
not just customizing and localizing the buyer journey per se, but you're actually focusing on the actual buyer and how their experience varies, and you need to cater to
Yeah,
the different communities that are out there, and not just the actual like pointing and clicking and checking out and that
for
start to
sure.
finish buyer
So,
journey. Exactly. So it's a pretty nuanced skill.
it's
And I think the article that Ronaldo had shared, it really brought a lot of interesting points up. Do you make an individual store for each target market, or do you tailor one for each market? Those types of things. That's why I love getting your perspective, Giulia.
So, well, yeah, that's a good question. So, the thing is, you should you can highlight different aspects through your copy. If you have a store that is rendered in different languages for different target markets, then you can apply a certain level of localization through your copy, but you're not going to be able to go much deeper than that because the whole design and the whole flow for a buyer remains the same. Like you cannot render, you cannot have a different version unless you have a separate store. So the way it works is that you can have copies of your main store. So let's say you are a French merchant and you create your Shopify store for France first, and then you decide you want to expand to the rest of the European Union. You have a few options depending on what Shopify plan you're on. So if you are, it really depends on the level of subscription that you have. But if you want to take it, as far as we were just saying, with a deep level of localization and that touches on UX and other components of the buyer's journey, then you're gonna want to recreate a different store that's separate from your initial French, and so you'll do a different one for Germany, and then you'll do one for North America, and so on and so forth, because that allows you more the ability to modulate those various aspects differently. Otherwise, I think you're just gonna be constrained by the ability of only changing your copy, basically. Copy and pretty much your copy.
Right.
I mean, some other elements of internationalization, like currency and numbers and formatting, those type of elements, yes, you can change those, but you're not going to be able to go much deeper than that.
Right. I see Pavel has joined the stage. Do you have
Pavel
something
up
you...
on stage. Yeah, I'm going to turn off this.
I have just a, thank you. I have just a quick question. We've been talking about markets and languages, and Ronaldo, with your background, Swiss, German, can you speak a little bit about that, like the guidance you give companies when they're making a decision how to treat, let's say, German and all the German-speaking markets, and does Switzerland need its own transcreated copy of German, or does it depend?
Very good question. Thanks for asking. Yeah, the German market is very interesting. I think for me, German as a Swiss, it's really a foreign language. Swiss German is a language that's only spoken and not written, and it's that far away from the normal written German that when Swiss people go to Berlin, to Germany, and they speak to each other, the other people would not understand it. And I mean, they would not be able to follow the conversation. It takes them a while to get it. So it's way more than just like a dialect or, a variation.
Kind of like when we go to New Orleans, right, Giulia?
No, whereas I was in Switzerland, and my German is admittedly really bad. I couldn't understand a word.
Mine auch. Mine ist auch schlecht Deutsch.
Es ist wirklich schwierig. Wirklich schwierig.
Wirklich.
Because you were hearing Schweizerdeutsch.
Schweizerdeutsch.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
Schweizerdeutsch.
I learned Schwäbisch Deutsch originally. We were talking about the difference between spoken and written. Anyways, let's not go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, so it basically means it makes sense to, but in Switzerland you also have like the written German on all the websites and the content. There are a few differences. For example, the S is different, but it would make sense not only from a language perspective, but it makes sense because the culture is really different. Switzerland is a very interesting market. It's very small, but it's basically an island in Europe, and there's a lot of money to make in Switzerland. It's a small but a very interesting market, and I would recommend to at least adapt the written German as a first step, and then as a second step try to localize and bring in those different words people use in Switzerland than in Germany. So I think it totally
Thank you so much, Ronaldo.
It makes sense to have a different page for Switzerland,
Yeah, and I would take it one step further. If you have a page in Switzerland, you may want to have it trilingual, so that you have a language selector for German, French, and Italian. That would be ideal. And it drives me nuts whenever I'm on Swiss sites that they only have it in two languages and they always leave Italian out. It's like German followed by French, and I'm like, okay, I see who's being discriminated here. Duly noted. So yeah, it bothers me to no end, but that's because my mom lives in Switzerland, and I have some personal heart attachments to that side of it. So yeah.
I see. Yeah, the Italian part is just really small.
I know.
Think it's all for the Swiss companies. They feel like it's polite to do it in all the languages.
Yeah,
it's not always a necessity, but it's kind of the things to do,
Right.
Inclusion.
Yeah. We have a wonderful client, a wonderful Swiss-Italian merchant in the Ticino region. They sell amazing wines. They're called Delea, and they're really good. They have a beautiful website where you can buy an online wine, and they mostly sell within Switzerland, though, because as you said, Switzerland is an island, and it's very complicated to ship in and out of Switzerland because it's not part of the European Union. So, from an e-commerce standpoint, it's a nightmare. And it is. They actually opened up they opened up an office with a small warehouse in Germany so that they could also hit the German market, and it works. They have a good customer base in Germany that they serve from that warehouse and from that legal address. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do it. Other than that, their audience is entirely Swiss, but they're incredibly successful, and their wine is excellent. I tried it. I can vouch for it. So yeah, absolutely. And
Nice.
and their website is in all of the Swiss official languages. So I'm very proud of them. They do a great job. Their name is Delea. I just don't know. I'm not paid to say this. I just want to do a shout out to one of our
little
wonderful
sales
customers.
pitch
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
I love it. We
Love
talked
it.
about honey last week, and we talk about Swiss wine this week.
Yeah.
So, Giulia, I have a question for you. So, since you are working at Shopify,
Sure.
I feel like when customers come to us and ask about like the capabilities of these different shop tools, I mean, if you want to have an online shop, you're doing your research, and then you have this like, Squarespace, Shopify, a ton of other options. And it turns out that Shopify has some, translation capabilities, but still you need kind of a plugin. I
Yeah.
think the two plugins we mostly use are Weglot and Langify.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about like why you need a plugin for this, and what would be the best way to approach
That's a good
the
question.
translation in
Well,
Shopify?
it is a good question, and I'm not the best person to answer this. I'm sorry. I'll try my best, but I'm not technical on the client side. Like I'm not a product person. I'm a marketing person. In fact, I do localization on the marketing side of Shopify. So I'm gonna try my best, but I want to temper expectations here. So my understanding is that yes. So someone who signs up, let's say Tucker decides he wants his own Shopify store, he signs up and he wants to translate it in all the languages.
I
I'm
have
not
my own
gonna be.
Shopify store.
You do.
What?
What are you selling? Hats?
What are you selling?
It's a pilot right now for this silly. I have my own website and all of this other stuff. It's all just it's not ready yet. But
Wow.
that's why
I love
I'm
that.
so excited about this topic. And
So you're taking
Yeah.
notes. You're taking notes.
yes.
He
Okay.
is taking notes. I noticed
Excellent.
that.
So Ronaldo is correct that you need a plugin, you need an app basically. So for everything that Shopify does not offer natively, you can go on the Shopify App Store and download an app or a plugin for the thing that you needed. Some of these, most of them are, you have to pay for them, and the most widespread famous ones are the ones that you mentioned. So there's Translation Lab, there's G Translate, there's Langify, there's Weglot, there's Langshop, which is mostly used in Italy, I think. There's a bunch of them. Why is that? It is because, as I said, 4.5 years ago, we didn't even have internationalization, localization in Shopify. So this is not, it has not been on our roadmap to solve translation ultimately for the buyer. Like, I mean, it is for the merchant. That's what we call our customers, right? We call our clients merchants. So Tucker is a merchant for us because he has a Shopify subscription. He has a Shopify store. He's a merchant. So we haven't solved this problem for the merchants yet, which is not to say that we won't solve it ever. We might, but in the meantime, we haven't solved it yet, and so this is how we bridge that gap by providing the opportunity to use a plugin and a third-party service, basically. Does that help? Not at all. I'm sorry.
I love the plugins. So to me, like Shopify is a lot like WordPress, right? It's like it's a platform, but like the magic happens in all the plugins and the integration. So like my Shopify is integrated with my WordPress, with my website. It's integrated with my Facebook page, my company page, so that I can sell stuff on there. Now, granted, like I said, I've got like socks on there. Like I haven't. It's just a proof of concept at this point. I'm not. Well, Ronaldo can appreciate the socks, I'm sure. Yeah. But
Of
I was
course.
gonna say you guys should team up on that.
right?
Let's do it, Tucker. Come on.
You know, if you guys are familiar with the print on demand model, we could start a knit on demand model based on the original sock idea of Ronaldo.
Yeah, let's do it. I
Knit
want to
on
do it
Marsi.
now.
demand.
15 years later, maybe.
Knit,
I-
knit on demand. You basically
Knit on.
yeah.
You're
I
gonna
like
need
it.
a whole database of grannies available.
Let's talk. Let's
100%.
crowdsource. Let's crowdsource to the old folks'
I'm gonna-
homes.
Yeah. It's a side gig, Tucker. I mean, and my mom
Side
can be the
hustle.
first knitter.
I'm all about
Oh my
side gigs.
God.
This podcast is a side gig. So
Exactly.
Side hustle with grannies involved.
let's do a quick reset of the room here really quickly. If you
Yes.
joined us in the last half an hour, my name is Tucker Johnson, and I have Liz Dunn Marsi, my co-presenter here. If you're watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, welcome. Come join us on Periscope. Periscope. Come join us on Clubhouse. Paula Pellicani, our Argentinian friend, just messaged us in the live chat down below that she needed an invite. I just sent you an invite. Maybe we'll see you in the next 20 minutes. We're talking about Shopify. We're talking about localization. We're talking about differences in culture, globalization, internationalization, all of those other SEO optimized keywords that you guys want in your website. We have Giulia from Shopify and Ronaldo from Supertext on the phone. Liz, what am I forgetting?
You know, I think you just did it. You hit it all. But yeah, please make sure to follow everybody who is in this room. There's a lot of really awesome and talented people from the localization industry and beyond. So, you know, thank you everybody for being here. And please do raise your hands. We're happy to bring you up to speak.
Which is being recorded. Full disclaimer, which
And
is being recorded.
if you do come up and share, please know it is being recorded and you're essentially giving us your permission. And yeah, anybody have any questions for Giulia or for Ronaldo about Shopify?
I do.
Okay, well,
but I want to give it.
How about Tucker?
Okay, but I don't want to intimidate other people.
Anyone besides Tucker?
I want to talk about like what kind of data do you have around the effects, the benefits, the cost-benefit ratio, or return on investment at Shopify when it comes to localization? So, if your boss comes to you and asks, you know, how much money is it going to go into this other market, and how much money can we expect to make in this other market by localizing? How do you make that case? How do you put together that data? And this is for Giulia, of course.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Oh yeah, we're going there. We're going there.
Oh,
we're going straight
well,
for the guts. We've only got half an hour left, and ROI is one of those things that's.
Well,
Yeah.
I just go to my boss Daniel Sullivan, who is the whiz of data, and I'll be like, "Can you answer this?" But yeah, unfortunately, he's not in the audience. He was supposed to be.
Daniel,
Yeah.
where are you? Daniel, if you're
I
watching
don't
this
know.
recorded, shame, sir.
Hey, Daniel, I needed you and you abandoned me.
Mm-mm.
So, no, I mean, I deal with those type of questions that, you know, not from a point of view of merchants figuring out what, you know, which market they should do next, and should they use Langify or some other plugin to translate their store for, you know, for this new market or locale that are trying to break into. We don't get involved with that. What we get involved is our, you know, overall strategy of what are the next markets we're gonna get into, and that's based on
You don't give us any confidential info. I don't want you getting in trouble over this, Giulia.
In fact, I'm not going
Right.
to. I'm basically buying time. I'm like, okay, how can I answer this?
Thank you for your honesty.
Always.
She's
That's
brutally honest.
Absolutely, always. I don't know how to be in any other way. So, no, we have a roadmap. We have you know, we have like anchor countries, expansion countries, and markets, and they're based on projections and other you know, factors, and we make decisions, and then sometimes we change those decisions. We change them a lot. So, you know,
Yeah, that's actually golden, I think. The ability to change and be agile and change those decisions, because especially a lot of like older, more mature, older, old school, pick your adjective, pick your descriptor. But a lot of these older companies, it's like they go into languages like, because this is the way it's always been done. It's like, I'm going to localize into these 21 languages because period. And what I've been noticing, I've been having a lot of conversations around this with different people, is there's a much more mature, data-driven approach to market entry strategy these days that we just didn't see back in the day. At least I didn't see it. And the people that I've been talking to have noticed this as well. And where this is an advantage to newer companies like Shopify, because the old guys can't move that quick. Because if they want to go build a case, and I've worked with a lot of these old guys, but if they want to go build a case for why we need to localize into Tagalog, right? Because, and they know it's the right thing to do, but they need to go convince. The problem for them is they don't even know whose door to knock on, right? Like there's no single point. There's no single decision maker. And these younger companies can be more flexible because there's room for leaders like yourself to advocate for things, make a decision, and convince the right parties.
Right.
Yeah, and then there's also another aspect, which is like, sometimes it has to do with how you perceive the whole concept of globalization. So you can come from a point of view of everything that we do should be available. But as you said, it's that's basically it's kind of like an ideal that's not data driven at all. So you end up going down the road of translating and localizing some languages and then realizing that nobody's using them, that you have 2 or 3 people in some faraway country who are accessing your backend in so and so language. I'm not gonna name names, but it has happened to us. And you just have to, recognize that you failed and cut your losses. And you just send them a basket of fruit. Say, hey, you're our only user. Here's a basket of fruit. We're going to shut it down.
Wow.
Sorry.
So you've actually shut down languages before, because that's incredibly hard to do.
I'm not going to deny or confirm this.
Okay.
I don't know if I have permission.
Fair enough. I hope it was nice fruit.
Actually, I do, because somebody got a basket of fruit. So it's probably...
We'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that.
Interesting.
But hey, it's like you fail forward and you learn, and then you do things differently. It's part of the, part of our the way we do things. Like,
Does there always need to be an ROI on localization? Like Ronaldo, you talked to earlier. We were talking about the Swiss market, Switzerland. Am I screwing that up? Yeah, no, Swiss. And I'm paranoid. I am an ignorant American, and I am alive on YouTube right now. So I'm watching this is why I don't watch recordings. But in the Swiss market, you localized into Italian, and you mentioned to be nice. And I thought that was neat,
right?
Because here we are talking about ROI, and then there's this other side of the spectrum, which is I want to be nice,
just
I
polite.
want to show respect.
And it's not just polite. It ends up affecting the perception of your brand, and it ends up affecting, the way, your ability to maybe do community outreach and other factors that ultimately end up increasing your bottom line. Like that's
right. Well, the end goal is to improve upon the revenue that it's generating.
It is. I'm pretty unsentimental about all this. Like, I mean, I do find it annoying if I'm, if I want to buy, if I'm consulting a Swiss website for whatever reason, and it's only turned around in German and French, and my mother tongue is Italian, I feel left out as an Italian speaker.
Right.
And I think if I were a Swiss Italian speaker, like from the regions where Italian is the mother tongue, I would be absolutely alienated right away, and I would be triggered, and I would not want to use them, and I would not want to buy their service and or product. And so in the end, the brand has, the way people feel about your brand is immensely important, especially with the younger generations. Like they really do get behind brands or against brands, and so you kind of don't want to mess it up. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
I see
think,
that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ronaldo.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I feel it's also a question of money, like for example, if you are a smaller shop and then you try to expand, it's what can you afford? I mean, transcreation or like recreating the whole content in all the other languages, that's quite expensive. It's for sure more expensive than just hit the button in Langify and populate everything with like machine translation. So that's an opportunity a lot of people do and use, so you can basically just click on a button and then you have like all these languages. But I think, the Italian market in Switzerland is really small, and it's in Italian is an official language. So I feel like it's the people's feel they have a right to get the content in that official national language, and so I think that's why most companies do it. I mean, I grew up and the products not only had one name or description on it, but three. So like, for example, every milk package had like saying milk, le, latte, three words. And I find that very interesting too when I came to the States here, that the products look just nicer because they have less copy on it. It's just like milk or almond milk or whatever kind of milk. You have more space for that variation. And if you go to Switzerland, you have to like say almond milk and then the whole thing in three languages. That takes up so much space.
You know what though? I see your point, and definitely from a graphic design perspective, you're probably right. I'm aligned. But on the other end, here in Canada, a lot of stuff is bilingual, so we have English and French, and I love how my children, at the breakfast table, they just automatically learn some French words just by staring at the milk carton and the cereal box. And the same happens when we used to travel to Switzerland, and and they would look at funny words that for them they were funny in German, and I would tell them what they are because I speak a little bit of German, and it just gives a sense to people of how much wider the world is. I mean, maybe I'm definitely sentimental about this, the opposite of what I just said before, but I just find that it's just nice to have more diversity and representation of languages in your daily life. I just think it's important, and it's nice. I like it that way.
I don't disagree. I want to I don't want to interrupt this, but I also want to be respectful of time. And I noticed that Jeff is up here on stage, and I want to give you a chance to chime in here. Jeff, what you got for us?
Yeah, hi guys.
Hey Jeff.
So question I had for you, Giulia, I'm just kind of thinking through this a little bit, but when you're looking at expanding into the different markets, different languages, did you reach out to anybody in the industry that at another client and said, hey, how are you guys doing this? What's your frame of thought in considering languages other than, analytics and the data behind saying, okay, this is a language to expand in? Is there anybody that you guys kind of followed in that sense or had a conversation with that just to see how they're doing it?
No, we did not reach out to anybody, but we do our own research and go look at, the big players, the ones that are established, and see what they do, which is public knowledge, and it's out there and easy to find. So we do our own research and we do our own sleuthing, for lack of a better term. But no, we don't go and reach out to other companies and say, hey, tell us how you've done it. That's not the Shopify way. I don't think
Gotcha.
anybody at Shopify would be like, oh yes, that's, people. But we hire a lot of talented, smart people, so we can sort of figure it out on our own.
Sure.
And then if we make a mistake, we accept that we made a mistake and we learn from it, and that's that. Yeah.
And you send a fruit basket.
Yeah, that's right.
Jeff, I can tell you, we do a lot of work at NIMSY on like market entry strategy and stuff like that for different clients.
Yeah.
And we do get requests from companies similar to Shopify, like kind of in that space. I don't think we're working with Shopify directly. If I were, I wouldn't say anything, Julia. But we get a lot of requests for like, hey, can you look at my competitors and tell me what languages are they in? Because there's different variables depending upon the service or product. There's what languages are they in and what markets are they in? Because they're
Right.
two very different. And you want to add a third one, what currencies do they operate in, right? So all of these different things. So there is interest out there. I kind of respect Julia's approach, what she's been talking about, which is data led, maybe data, not data driven, but data led, but leaving room for that instinct, that passion. I don't want to call it instinct, right? But leaving room for that passion and leaving room to adjust on the fly, because I think the companies that are able to adapt through trying times are the ones that are able to most quickly adjust on the fly.
Yeah, and usually the ROI sometimes when the request comes from the actual country, because there's just a general interest, but there's not a clear defined like moment of, okay, now we need to be considered for the expansion, is not always clear up front. And then 6 months down the line, you realize that it was not worth it at that point.
Well, there's a lot of times like that indicator that you're saying that comes from the market, that might come in the form of from your marketing team or your analytics saying, wow, we sure have a lot of people in Japan logging in and looking at our English site. Way more people in Japan than in Germany. So, okay, this kind of gives you a hint about where to localize and how to localize, how to prioritize those dollars. But those leading indicators don't always work out, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, exactly. Like and Japan is a perfect example.
that's why
Like Japan is one of the toughest market to break in for Western companies. Like it's almost impossible unless you have a dedicated Japanese team on site.
I mean,
which
not
we
pretty
do.
much. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to have.
You have
yes.
to. You have
Right.
to. Otherwise, you're gonna fail. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. You cannot handle it from headquarters in Europe or North America or somewhere else. Like you gotta have a local team there and a local team of Japanese people. Like you're gonna fail miserably otherwise. And it is so hard. And Japanese is expensive and it's slower. It's the slowest language that we have.
Yes, and it requires a lot of rounds of feedback.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a whole other level of care that you have to apply and a whole other level of investment.
Yes.
Whereas, so you're looking at, what Tucker just said, maybe you're looking at Japan and you're looking at Germany. And in Germany, you may be able to keep on going with English only for a little while longer. And when you add German, yes, you'll see your traffic and your numbers go up, absolutely. But German is also pretty tolerant of English usage. And so you don't have to be 100% perfect. You don't have to have everything ready before you launch. You can have a beta. You can have, your marketing content in German and your backend in German and your help docs in German. But then you can leave some features names in English and nobody's going to freak out. There's also that aspect, right? It's like, what is the language? What is the English tolerance level? What is the English proficiency level? But also the tolerance. The tolerance is a huge aspect.
Yeah.
Like go look at for example, because I'm Italian, I'm well aware of this. Like English proficiency in Italy, terrible. Tolerance, super high. People love English, love it. Like they don't care that I'm calling things in English. They actually think it's cooler. So,
darum spreche ich ganz schlecht Deutsch, because when I went to Germany for a year, my German, the goal was to learn German. Well, goddamn, Germans love practicing their English with the American guy, right? So why do you think my German still sucks? Because I spoke English the whole time.
I had the same experience in France. It's insane.
All right, guys, we've got, I think, 5, 6, 7 minutes here. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Thank you so much, Giulia, Ronaldo, for agreeing to do this with us today. Jeff, thanks for coming up on stage. Liz, thank you as always for doing this together. Does anyone have any closing thoughts for us as we wrap it up here, including people in the audience? There's still time to come up here.
Pretty quiet group for us. Anybody, I see that Marina is here, but she's just listening. So I appreciate the little logo change. Anybody else in the audience want to come up and share anything? Oh,
come on, don't be shy, people. Don't be shy.
I want to know if Paula ever made it into the room, because Paula Pelicani left a message in the chat. Do we have anything in chat? Let's open up the chat here. Ali Toxituli. Hi, I'm new to this mix mainly through interpreting and very nice to localization teamwork. I'm following through LinkedIn site and turning in from my happy to be here. Thank you so much for leaving a comment.
New York.
Whoops. Wrong button. Follow the moderators, everybody. That's me and Liz. Ronaldo, Giulia, Liz, thank you so much for joining us. I think now is as good time as any to wrap it up. So with that, if you're listening online and you do not have a Clubhouse invite, please contact us. We'll make sure that you're set up. If you have a topic or a suggestion for an upcoming session, or if you'd like to be a guest, please reach out to Liz or reach out to myself here. And with that, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Tucker.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia and Ronaldo.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.